Well, that's Harry Belafonte from the album Calypso combined with brass. And I think I said earlier that Harry Belafonte would be here today if it was possible. He's on a very tight schedule and was going to try and come in, and he did. That's the important thing. And he's here with Nipsey Russell now. And I want to talk to him for a few minutes. He's got a big concert tonight at the Harmon Gym in over on Cal campus. And he's doing...
Oh, Berkeley.
Berkeley.
Did you say the word?
I've been there. Come over here. And Nipsey, you kind of trade shares, and then Nipsey, you move in too, because you're doing college dates right now. You've got a bunch of them lined up, yes?
Every 2 years, I take off, and we do between 6 and 8 weeks of touring, nothing but universities. And this year we've been out, well, we have 3 more performances left, and we've been out 7 weeks and 2 days.
7 weeks and 2 days, touring like where? What universities?
Why don't you tell them?
Tell them.
Well, we began at Brown University in Providence, and we came right down the coastline, the Maryland University, Seton Hall, a few New York universities, then out through Ohio, Cincinnati, Kent State, and Iowa State, Montana, every one of the major state universities, and some of the other schools that are religiously endowed, like Luther College. And
did you hit some out-of-the-way places, too?
A few small towns.
Like, for example?
No, Nipsey says, he said that I've known Nipsey for years, and he said he couldn't wait for a chance to go on a tour with me. He'd heard the great rumors about touring with Belafonte.
Yeah.
He said he hitched his wagon to the biggest star he could find to play all the major cities of the world.
The great capitals of the world.
That's right. He said, like Decorah, Iowa.
Decorah, Iowa?
Yes.
Bozeman, Montana.
Yes.
Hays, Kansas.
Did you get stickers for your suitcases?
I did, from every school.
You travel with a lot of people, don't you?
In this tour, we're traveling with roughly 30 people in the company.
Singers,
troop
dancers.
movement.
It's a troop movement.
We
How do you
have
travel,
singers-
bus?
Bus, truck, pogo stick, huskies, camels, anything that'll get us there.
Mule sledges.
Why colleges? Is there a reason for doing colleges?
First of all, I find it is my way of staying very much in touch with the youth stream of America.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, I don't think that an artist, a performing artist, can ask for any richer experience than performing before college kids.
Mm-hmm.
Down at UCLA, for instance, we played to 15,000 students in one night.
Mm.
We play in the field houses or in the gymnasiums.
Maryland State, 18,000.
18,000 at
And
Maryland
they're
State.
very hip, very sharp. Nothing gets past them. They're full of, there's no lethargy. They're not corroded yet.
Then there's some of the toughest audiences, aren't they? Keep you on your toes.
Most dynamic.
I don't mean, no, by tough, Nipsey, I didn't mean that they don't respond, but I mean you've
Sharp,
got to be sharp.
Oh, very.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
They'll
For example, a
anticipate
Las Vegas audience wouldn't it be as hip as a collegiate audience would.
They think they're hip, but there's nothing as hip as a college audience. No, sir.
So you do all these university appearances. That would be a rewarding experience, too,
Very,
I would think.
Very.
and an exhausting one.
And an exhausting one. What about college people today, Harry Belafonte? What about the people, the young people on campuses all over the country? Are we in trouble?
No, as a matter of fact, I would honestly say that if it were not for them, we would be in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Because you meet them, you talk
Yeah.
to them, you don't just perform for them. I know
No.
that.
I tell you that there's a tenaciousness, there's a curiosity, there's a bit of the rebel in the best sense of the word in most of these centers, and it's very active. And young people are not they're not just taking it as it comes.
Mm-hmm.
They question it, they challenge it. I think that Berkeley is perhaps the most avant-garde and the most noted
Mm-hmm.
of what is the contemporary spirit among university crowds today.
And yet the greatest sensitivity and compassion can be found in these young people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what people usually ascribe and attribute to them, just a sort of a devil-may-care desire to have their own wishes catered to. The feeling that they have, the humanness is there.
Well, what about the college students that make the newspapers, the ones that we worry about? Are they in the majority or in the minority?
It's like the adults that make the newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
Only, go ahead.
Good.
Only a few bad people are written about,
Mm-hmm.
and they're the gross majority of Americans are law-abiding.
In other words, it doesn't make the headlines if you don't beat your wife.
Oh, no.
It's the wife beater who gets in the papers,
Exactly.
really.
And it's also another thing. I think that the kind of aggressiveness expressed by young people, their curiosity, their hopes, their desires, even their ambivalences, is generally geared towards the status quo, is geared towards the establishment. Who has the most to lose by this kind of an aggressive conduct? The establishment. And whenever I've read certain chronicles dealing with the description of what goes on in campus life, they're always the staid old reactionaries.
Mm-hmm.
It's always the journals that carry things that are not in sympathy with progress.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's intellectual progress or whether it's social or human progress. You find a guy who is against the truth and the morality that exist in a kind of movement as we've had in Berkeley. You'll find that that guy is also against the civil rights movement. He's against a certain kind of avant-gardism in art. He's against jazz. He's against this. He's against that. They generally fit a pattern.
Let me ask you a question. Do you mind if I ask how old you are now?
Please go right ahead.
How old are you now?
I'm not going to tell you.
You're as old as I am.
I'm 39 years old.
39 years old. Do you feel that you're still as in touch with college audiences as you were 5-10 years ago?
As a matter of fact, I find that I'm more in touch today than I was 5 or 10 years ago. 5 or 10 years ago, I was still terribly preoccupied with certain ambitions, certain desires, and my own career development, which took me out of the arena of young people because I was very busy with the business and with the trades and with Madison Avenue and with Hollywood. I've long since found out that all of it is nothing but clay feet. It's meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
And that the real truth for me and the real in touch for me is with people.
Did that come through monetary success, do you think? Do you think that the financial thing made you able to look around a little more and begin? You say ambition, and I understand that, but now you've done exceedingly well. I mentioned before you got here that you are certainly one of the 3 or 4 highest priced acts in the business today. So certainly...
And he's got all of it on him.
He's got all of it with him, Nipsey? Do you think that when you reached that point, and I would assume that you're there, where the thing we all go through, when the hounds stop yowling at the door, when you can look back and say, well, I've got this in the bank, and is that when you started looking around for other things?
No, I would be the first to submit that a certain kind of economic security gives you a certain kind of emotional privilege and a certain kind of freedom that you would not have. But I doubt very strongly if you could find anyone who knew me 15 years ago when I first started in the business, or a little longer even, that could qualitatively say that there is a great deviation from what my passions and what my commitment was to the humanist arena. If there's any great difference between the Belafonte then and the Belafonte now, in terms of the real essence of the man.
Mm-hmm.
But also, an individual can spend his life in the quest of money.
Is there such a thing as getting enough? I guess for some individuals, there isn't such a thing, really.
For some, and I think the world is replete with such individuals. I know men who are worth $100 million who feel that it's only a warm-up to what their real ambitions are. And I know other individuals who have acquired sums of money that have been just enough to give them and their families the kind of security that's necessary, and they have now returned and have begun to commit themselves more fully to what I call the humanist arena. I would like to be with that group.
Mm-hmm. Talking to Harry Belafonte and Nipsey Russell, and we're going to take a minute out. 22 minutes after 3, Harry Belafonte and Nipsey Russell are here. They're in concert tonight over on Berkeley campus in Harmon Gymnasium. Nipsey, do your opening line when Harry Belafonte introduces you on stage, and then when you come on stage and you tell him to get it. Do your...
I got a better line for you.
Now do that one first. Then
do that one first.
No, you see, you have to understand I set it up because I open the show.
Yeah.
And after I do about 25 minutes, I then go into a bit of patter about the reason that I'm on the campus. And I said that humor is very important. And I said I was very lucky to come on campus today to find a freshman here who is really a master at humor. And I said, and now, ladies and gentlemen, freshman Nipsey Russell. And he comes out, in any college we go to, he comes out dressed in the school colors and the sweater and the beanie cap and the pennant. And he comes out with a little flag, and right away the kids are with him. And then he says to me, because I have to give him his mic. We use 2 mics, and I give him his mic. And then he says to me,
go and cram, pass your exam, and try to stay out of Vietnam.
And that starts it, right?
Yes.
These kids are good to work to, Nipsey,
Yes.
from a comedian's point of view.
Oh, yes, definitely. I find whatever the current gripe is, whatever the difficulty is on that particular campus, and I write a limerick that sort of succinctly states what their petition would be. And I find out the names of the disciplinarian on the campus, whether he be dean of students, dean of men, dean of women, and I find out the local necking spot and what I call the recruiting base and the co-ed dorm, and these are the things. I make whatever jokes I would use, I make them apply to their local situation.
University.
Yeah.
Now, that's not so easy because you did how many universities in how many days?
43 in 50 days.
Oh, boy. Don't you ever get your necking spots confused between universities?
That's what you got to do. You got to do new homework every day.
Harry Belafonte, you started in the music business in about 1950 or 51. Am I right?
Yeah. Started getting paid.
And you were working I think in Greenwich Village then, at least on the East Coast.
That's right.
And you did a couple records, I remember, for RCA Victor under the name Harry Belafonte. And
I still use the same name.
No, but you dropped the Harry, don't you, generally?
Yeah,
because now just say Belafonte.
It was too much wordage for the cover.
For an album cover. Yeah. Oh, I see. All right. But you started 15, 16 years ago, and you did a few records, and then things started to happen, and you have developed into one of the biggest names that will ever be in show business, Nipsey. That's true.
A legend.
He's a legend, absolutely.
Yes. An art form.
When did you know it was going to happen? Did you know it from the beginning? Did you say, I've got something to give the world, and when the time comes that this is going to happen, or one day did you wake up kind of surprised? How did it happen?
I tell you, I never started out with any ambitions to acquire what has since been put at my disposition. I had a passion and a feeling to be in the arts. I wanted to be a performer. I studied to be an actor in the theater. I found it very difficult to get work in the theater. First of all, at best, it's difficult for young artists. And in those days, and it's not too different today, but it was even more difficult then. It was very difficult for Negro artists to find work on Broadway. And I turned to singing and turned to dealing in the personal appearance field because I loved the contact with audiences. And I was very satisfied to work in Greenwich Village, to work at the Village Vanguard, to be exposed to audiences on a small level. And I was prepared to accept that as my life.
Forever.
And public acceptance combined with recordings and with occasional appearances in the mass media, meaning television and motion pictures, began to spread the image. And I can't honestly say that I stayed awake nights dreaming of my name up in bright lights on Broadway. That never had any real appeal for me. It was just to be able to sing and to do things that I felt passionately about. And the momentum of public acceptance and approval then widened the
So
spectrum.
it happened slowly, and it was easy to accept as it happened.
Very slowly. Nipsey and I were talking, and Nipsey once said to me, it took him 20 years to become an overnight success.
The Blue Angel.
I don't think there's anybody successful, really successful in any field that hasn't at least one time in their life reached the point where they said, I'm in the wrong bag. I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm going to get out of this. Whether it's a radio announcer whose boss every day says, you're just not getting it, and finally says, well, I'm going to do something else, or a singer. Did that ever happen to you? Did you ever reach the point where you said, no, music is not for me. Entertainment is not for me. I want to do something else. I've got to do something else.
Well, the first time I sang was in 1948, and I came into the business as a pop singer. And I was I always had a great interest in jazz, still do. I'm very close to a lot of the guys in the jazz field. And I tried my wares as a pop singer, and I found it very unfulfilling. I found that after coming out of school with years of Shakespeare and Dostoevsky and Gorky and Arthur Miller and all the great art, but coming into the field of popular singing, I just couldn't cut the mustard, emotionally or otherwise, although there had been some kind of a very warm acceptance, but not an enthusiastic one by audiences who had seen me. And I left the field to go back and to continue study in the theater. And at the same time, we had a small restaurant down in Greenwich Village, which I opened, which was supposed to be our bread and butter while I was in my school years. And it was during that time in Greenwich Village that I made the transition into into the folk art, because I don't consider myself a folk singer, although a bulk of the material that I sing comes from the folk field, because the techniques that I use in singing are qualitatively different from that of the traditional image of folk singers. And it was out of this early frustration when I quit the business, singing pop tunes, and said, well, that was just not for me. That applies to what you're saying when I just said, well, I can't do it.
But you know, people ask Harry, they say, why don't you do a Broadway show? And they forget that the first artistic achievements were in Broadway shows. One was John Murray Anderson's Almanac, and the other was a thing called Three for the Night. And they were that's the first time I ever heard of it. Was
and that would have
Broadway
been in what, 48, 49?
No, that was in 50, 53, and then 55.
Harry Belafonte and Nipsey Russell. We'll be right back. Harry Belafonte and Nipsey Russell. Can you stay for a few more minutes? Do you have to run this very minute? Can you stay another 10 minutes?
Oh, man, that gun at the door, I'll do anything you say.
All right. We've got to break for the headlines. I want to tell you before we break for the headlines about Royal baking in the refrigerator. Actually, it isn't baking at all, because the Royal people make this mix for minutes. Before 4 o'clock, Harry Belafonte and Nipsey Russell are here. They're appearing tonight on campus at Berkeley and Harmon Gymnasium. And, Harry, you said a few minutes ago that that being a pop singer wasn't the answer for you, that you couldn't do it, that it wasn't rewarding enough. And I think I know, not exactly, I think I know what you mean. But I was interested, who would you say is the greatest pop singer today in the music business? Is there one that you particularly dig? Your favorite?
Yeah, Ella Fitzgerald.
Good. That'd be my choice as a gal. What about a man?
I tell you, Sammy Davis moves me, But I think that what Sammy does gasses me because he's such a great performer. But for a straight stand-up singer, I'd say Joe Williams.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I kind of thought you'd say Tony Bennett, and I don't know why. Maybe that's my preference.
No, I like Tony very much.
Yeah.
I like Frank Sinatra very much. But when you come to talk about soul and something that really
going a different route.
Yeah, I think that Joe Williams cuts the mustard.
Well, he won every poll last year, every single one, over Sinatra and everyone else.
Who did? Yeah.
Joe did.
Absolutely. 23 minutes before 4 o'clock right now.